If you've ever paid a visit to the electronic front porch, you will probably hear me say any number of different things often. One of them is God is the universe's greatest accountant. The proof of that is in the way that he always manages to balance the books. Well, in the case of Hunter Biden, it may very well be that the Almighty is in the process of doing just that. Wonder what I'm talking about? Hang on, folks. We're going to get into all that in just 1 second. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to my electronic front porch and let's talk. A little over a month ago, I did a video about the impending plea deal that had been reached between Hunter Biden and his lawyers and the Department of Justice regarding charges of tax evasion and illegal gun possession. Now, nobody, myself included, was real happy about this deal because if you start analyzing it, you begin to realize, hey, wait a minute, this guy is being treated with absolute inequality compared to anyone else. Oh no, he's not being punished more severely. Hunter Biden was being let off with a good old fashioned slap on the wrist. Charges that should have gotten him at least 4 years in jail got him a suspended sentence, pleading down, and basically no time in jail at all. Well, what happened with the plea deal? Well, today he was supposed to go into court and the judge was supposed to make a decision on whether or not that the plea deal would be accepted. And ladies and gentlemen, that's when all hell broke loose. Basically, what happened is poor old Hunter got his comeuppance, and boy, when Lady Karma came to pay him a visit, she was not in any kind of good mood to put up with his shenanigans. Now, let me set this up. The judge in this case, the Trump appointee, was not in a real good mood to begin with because last night it was discovered that somebody on Hunter Biden's legal team did something extraordinarily unethical to the point that a federal judge was ready to sanction the whole bunch of them. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Headline from Breitbart: Hunter Biden's attorneys face potential sanctions over alleged misrepresentations to the court. Article written by Jordan Dixon Hamilton. Hunter Biden's attorneys face potential sanctions over, quote, misrepresentations to the court after his legal team allegedly lied to the clerk in his criminal case. The president's son is set to enter a plea agreement on Wednesday. This article was written obviously Tuesday night. After his legal team secured a sweetheart plea agreement on Biden's charges by federal authorities of illegally possessing a handgun and failing to pay 2 years' worth of federal taxes. On Tuesday, House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Jason Smith, Republican of Missouri, submitted a brief to U.S. District Court Judge Mary Ellen Noreika that argued that she should reconsider Biden's plea agreement in light of an IRS whistleblower's recent claim that the Department of Justice stifled their investigation into Biden. Quote, the defendant appears to have benefited from political interference, which calls into question the propriety of the investigation of the U.S. Attorney's Office, Smith's attorney, Theodore Catella, wrote in a court filing. It is critical that the court consider the whistleblower materials before determining whether to accept the plea agreement. However, Biden's attorneys face possible sanctions after a member of the legal team, quote, misrepresented her identity to improperly convince the clerk to remove Smith's brief from the docket. Quote, it appears that the caller misrepresented her identity and who she worked for in an attempt to improperly convince the clerk's office to remove the amicus materials from the docket, Noreika wrote in an order on Tuesday. Noreika gave Biden's legal team until 9 p.m. Tuesday night to show why sanctions shouldn't be brought. Okay, let's get into this. Somebody on Hunter Biden's legal team did a big no-no. Bad juju. Here's basically how it went down. Now, as you're aware, there have been investigations going on in the U.S. House of Representatives primarily by three different committees. The House Ways and Means, which handles issues related to taxes, chaired by Smith of Missouri, Comer, who chairs the Oversight Committee in the House, and the Judiciary Committee, which is chaired by Jim Jordan of Ohio. All three of them, in one form or another, have been doing investigations into Joe Biden and particularly Hunter Biden's business dealings, as they feel that there is evidence that through Hunter Biden, that foreign dignitaries and foreign government officials have been funneling money to President Joe Biden back when he was vice president. Now, there's been a lot that's been brought forward. So basically, what Jason Smith, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, did was give a brief through his lawyer to this judge and said, look, before you consider this plea agreement, you may want to take a look at this because there's more going on here than I'm sure you're not aware of yet, and it may very well affect whether you should or should not accept this plea deal. Okay, all that's very reasonable, makes perfect sense. The only problem is somebody from Hunter Biden's legal team contacted the judge's office, purported to be from the Ways and Means Committee, said, oh yeah, by the way, you can take that off the docket. It's not really necessary that you look at it now. It's okay. Just scratch what we did. And they got caught. Now, Hunter Biden's legal team's going, well, this is a misunderstanding. We don't know how this happened, blah, 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 blah. So needless to say, the judge wasn't in a real good mood going into today. So around 10 o'clock this morning, Hunter shows up at the courthouse with his entourage in tow, feeling like the cock of the walk and very much strutted in looking like it. What happened next? Like I said, God is the universe's greatest accountant. What happened next is just good old-fashioned, yeah, let's have some fun with this boy. Now, I want to show you something from Twitter because this is a very interesting question, and it's going to set up what happens. Take a look at this. Judge Mary Ellen Norica asked the prosecutor Leo Wise point blank, quote, is there any precedent for the kind of deal that's being proposed? Leo Wise, no, Your Honor, but the corrupt DOJ wants to pretend that Hunter Biden didn't get special treatment, the king of privilege. Now, that question and answer is fairly ominous, particularly for what was decided next. And here is the big news of the day that everybody is talking about. Headline from the UK Daily Mail. Dramatic moment of Hunter's lawyers told prosecutors sweetheart deal is off after judge eviscerated agreement and apologized to the president's son for dragging out his legal problems. U.S. District Judge Mary Ellen Norica savaged the terms of the agreement. It would dispense with 2 misdemeanors of tax charges and a gun charge. She demanded clarity, causing lawyers to clash, and then they united to defend it. Article written by Jeff Pearl, and Jeff Pearl is the only writer on this. I apologize. I thought there was someone else. Hunter Biden's lawyers and prosecutors expected a routine hearing Wednesday when they arrived in court with a carefully negotiated deal to keep the president's son out of prison. Instead, they found themselves turning on each other under the glare of a federal judge who was determined to pick apart their agreement. It was a tense and unexpected episode in a 3-hour ordeal that had the president's son stroll into the courtroom in his former hometown only to watch the plan to put his tax problems behind him crumble before his eyes. Reading a little further into the article, the clash came after federal judge Mary Ellen Norica lodged a series of attacks against the agreement that would have had the president's son plead guilty to 2 tax misdemeanors and avoid prosecution on a gun charge. Quote, I don't know what you're trying to accomplish, Biden lawyer Chris Clark told prosecutor Leo Wise in a jab he made well enough in an earshot of DailyMail.com at the front of the courtroom as the haggling was underway. You can't get around that, Wise countered, picking apart part of his argument. Well, then rip it up, Clark responded. The back and forth took place after Judge Norica questioning put the deal that would allow Hunter to avoid jail time for failure to pay taxes on the skids. Okay. This deal had already been worked out. Basically, all this hearing was supposed to do was just the judge comes in, looks at it, maybe asks a few minor questions, and then decides, okay, we're either going to do this plea deal or not. However, questions started to be raised by the judge. Now, what exactly was she looking at? What was she asking? Well, let's go to some audio on this. First, let's hear from Kash Patel, used to work in the Department of Defense and has also been a prosecutor at one time or another. So take a listen to this. He's talking with Benny Johnson. I'm going to play this.
National security prosecutor. I've been on both sides of the aisle, literally in federal court before tons of federal judges. And a federal judge has the authority not to enter into plea negotiations. And what this judge did, rightfully so, was question the DOJ if there are other criminal conduct related to the plea agreement. She's allowed to do that, or he. And I was not stunned by DOJ's answers, but the specificity that she went to FARA tells me she knew in the discovery process of this case that that issue had come up. And if that issue was going to be legally precluded from being prosecuted in the future, she as the jurist has the responsibility to demand that answer from the DOJ. And it looks like Hunter Biden's lawyers thought that the FARA registration, which they can't get a deferral on, which he has to go to federal prison on, which is a felony, they thought they had negotiated their way out of it. And it looks as if they just canned the plea agreement because, having been over there on the defense side, you quietly know when you've lost. And they lost on the FARA point is my first reaction, which to me tells me the DOJ tried to bury the FARA conviction.
Okay, let's get into this. What exactly is FARA? FARA is basically Foreign Agent Registration Act. Goes like this. Any U.S. citizen can lobby on behalf of a foreign government. Okay? It's real simple. You can do that. All you have to do is fill out a one-page form and tell everybody in the U.S. government, hey, by the way, I'm working on behalf of a foreign government or a foreign company, okay? For example, Burisma, all Hunter Biden has to do is just fill out a form and say, yes, I am lobbying on behalf of Burisma, and, for you folks that are working in the U.S. government or maybe other entities, be advised I am a registered agent with them. Hunter never did that. Now, I don't know if it's just drug-addled oversight or profound arrogance or the thought that maybe daddy can get me out of trouble. Who knows why Hunter didn't do it? But the fact of the matter is, he never did. What Kash Patel is saying is, a disagreement arose in the courtroom between Hunter Biden's lawyers and the prosecutors because basically the judge looked at both of them and said, now what does this cover? Are you sure? I mean, do we really know what the scope of this immunity is? And when they started realizing, oh crap, we can't really define it, that's when the whole thing starts falling apart. So, and as proof that Kash Patel is right on the money, take a look at this headline from Breitbart. Hunter Biden team rejected plea deal after prosecutors said it didn't include FARA immunity. Article written by Christina Wong. Hunter Biden's defense team on Wednesday rejected a plea agreement after a federal judge forced prosecutors to confirm that the deal did in fact not include immunity from future potential charges related to Hunter Biden's acting as an agent for foreign governments. According to the New York Times, Judge Mary Ellen Noreika had asked Leo Wise, a top prosecutor in the case, if the plea deal meant Hunter Biden would be immune from prosecution for other possible crimes, specifically including crimes related to the Foreign Agent Registration Act. When Wise said no, Biden's lead lawyer, Chris Clark, reportedly then said the agreement was null and void. Now, now there is a problem, and it basically gets down to this. Hunter Biden was given a lot of leeway here, and this agreement was going to cover a lot of things. Now, all of a sudden, it's blown up, and the prosecution and the defense now are caught in what I would argue is the legal equivalent of a Chinese finger trap. If you remember that great little toy, it runs about that long, and what it is, you put two fingers on either side. Once they're in, if you try to pull out, neither one can get out, because the more you try to pull out, the more stuck you get. There is one way to get out of it. One side one side has to go first before anybody else, then the other. If you remember playing with those as children. But basically, that's what we've got here. Hunter Biden's defense team wants that immunity from FARA. Prosecution's not so sure they're going to give it. The judge is looking at the whole thing going, what is the scope of this agreement, guys? I mean, how far is he going to be able to avoid prosecution? Nobody can answer that. Now, full disclosure, it is altogether possible that this agreement could come back up, but that makes for even bigger problems for Hunter Biden's defense team and for the Department of Justice. This deal stunk to high heaven when it was announced, and now that it's blown up and there's even more scrutiny on it, how in the world can they negotiate a slap on the wrist deal for Hunter Biden? Plus, on top of that, the judge was never comfortable with this deal as it was presented. She even went so far as to say the thing may be unconstitutional. So I don't know that if this deal is renegotiated, that Hunter Biden is going to get the same sweetheart treatment that he got before. And if he does, that's just going to make it even worse in the court of public opinion. Now, what do I think are the political upshots of all this? Well, number one, if I were the Republicans, I'd be pumping briefs in front of this judge as fast as they possibly can. I'd be sending over to this judge every bit of information that they've got related to Hunter's foreign business dealings and saying, look, before you ever accept any plea agreement on this, you better realize that there's a whole lot more going on here than you're being advised of. Because all that work that's being done in the House of Representatives is going to be for naught if Hunter can get immunity from prosecution on basically everything, which goes to a point that Robert Barnes made, famous constitutional attorney here in the United States. I want to play his reaction to this, so hang on, folks. Let me pull this up because this definitely bears listening to, and it runs for just a little bit of a minute.
So unique is I said I was real curious about where and what the immunity language said. Just how broad was it? And it turns out they placed it in the gun diversion deal rather than the tax deal. And so they hadn't published it to the world. So it's that procedural abnormality where they were doing kind of a double level deception that the court found that the court was like, hold on a second. What exactly? And all she was doing was a basic colloquy saying, okay, before we go through this deal, before I accept the deal that's been offered, and before Mr. Hunter Biden pleads guilty to it pursuant to the deal, it should be made clear exactly what immunity is being granted here. The government was hoping that would never become public. And so the government was like, oh, no, there's still ongoing investigations. It's not that broad. And of course, Hunter Biden's lawyers are like, on the record, it covers everything. Because you don't want that to be that's the whole point of the deal. And so the judge was like, well, since you guys don't even know what the immunity is as part of the deal, how in the world can I accept a plea deal or approve a plea deal where it's not clear what the immunity is? Now, contrary to some reports, she hasn't blown up the plea deal yet. She simply delayed deciding whether to accept it or not. But the way in which they were what she's forcing them to do is put in clear writing in the core tax deal itself exactly the scope and scale of immunity being given Hunter. And that was the one thing they did not want the world to fully know. That what this deal was really about is an in perpetuity immunity for Hunter, because that's critical to make sure he can never be flipped against Papa Joe.
Now you begin to understand why the events of today are so critical. There's a lot of political fallout from this thing. Keep in mind what happened earlier this week. Kevin McCarthy, the House Speaker, has said, you know what? We might wind up going to a impeachment inquiry regarding Joe Biden over these things that we're discovering in the House Oversight Committee, the Ways and Means Committee, and the House Judiciary Committee. The longer that this plea deal hangs out there unfinished for Hunter is the risk that it runs to Joe Biden, because if this judge out and out rejects the plea deal and says, no, he's pleading not guilty, which, by the way, Hunter Biden had to do today in light of the fact that there's no agreement. He had to enter a plea. Now, the Justice Department is required to make their case against Hunter, which they never really wanted to do. They wanted to bury this thing, sweep it under the rug, and as Barnes said, not only protect Hunter, but in the end, protect Papa Joe. This immunity deal, yeah, it takes Hunter Biden off the hook. But if it's as broad as what was being exposed today, then Hunter was being given protection from a whole lot of things that would have implicated Daddy. Now the whole thing's blown up. So there's big questions to be asked. Is this plea agreement salvageable? Number one. If it's not salvageable, what kind of case is the Justice Department going to be forced to bring against Hunter? How can the House Republicans benefit from this, or how will they try to benefit from it? If the plea deal is not reached and the trial is still ongoing, can the Republicans in the House force Hunter to testify regarding the matters that they're investigating? And where's Devin Archer in all this, who is Hunter's business partner? How much light is he going to shed on all of this? There's a lot of stuff to work out in this thing, and I'll tell you what, this is going to be very interesting to watch. Start to wrap up this video, please do me some favors as always. Number one, if you're not a subscriber to this channel, please do so. Number two, please hit the bell for notifications. I want to make sure you're always aware when we're putting out new material. Number three, please share this video around. I'll take all the help I can get as far as advertising. And number four, please give me a thumbs up. And finally, leave a comment below. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative, and I'll see you next time.